Katie, let it out with Katie. Let it out with Katie Dale, enthusiast and curator of people and ideas you need to hear. Hi, welcome to the 200th episode of Let It Out. I am your host, Katie Dale Bout, and this is my podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you are new and this is your first episode, I'm so glad you found it. I hope you go back and listen to the archives. There are now 199 new to you episodes that you can dive into. And if you have been listening to 199 of them, thank you. If you have been listening for a while, maybe the last 100, or you've gone, picked and chosen what you will through the archives, thank you so much for coming back. If this is your second episode, you came back, you listened again. Thank you. I'm so grateful. This sounds cheesy, but I feel like a broken record with this, and I've been saying it for the last several weeks, but this is truly my favorite thing that I've ever done creatively, and just maybe ever. It's helped me to meet so many great people through the people who listen to this podcast, the people who are guests on this podcast. I am so grateful that I started this in 2013, before a lot of people knew what podcasts were. It was before Serial and a lot of the big podcasts that exist now that brought people into the medium, which I'm so grateful that they did. But it was before a lot of those existed, and I was a pioneer in the Wild West of podcasting, and I kept with it. I still do it every single week for almost 5 years now. A new podcast still comes out on Wednesdays, and I started this from my tiny apartment in Michigan, or actually it wasn't tiny at all. It was a lot bigger than my apartment is now in New York City, but nonetheless, I was alone. I was a one-person show with this, and now I have help through my amazing podcast producer, Amanda. I couldn't do this without you. This is a celebration of our 200th episode, and I'm so grateful. The show has meandered and changed and hopefully grown since the beginning. It used to be called the Wellness Wonderland Radio when I first started, and then about 100 and some episodes in, around the time my book came out. If you're new to this podcast, I wrote a book also called Let It Out. It's about journaling, 55 journaling exercises, getting into all areas of your life, from organization, relationships, body image, all sorts of things. I find writing really helpful for self-awareness, which is why I always talk about topics that help us be more self-aware, because that's my goal in life right now, is just to become better at being myself. Anyway, the podcast changed to be called Let It Out, which I think really works as a podcast name. At first, I wasn't so sure, but I think that's really what I want people to do when they come on this podcast, is let out whatever they want to share in a really cozy, genuine, authentic way. And hopefully I create the space for them to be able to do that. Thank you for listening. I'm very excited about today's episode. It's with Sahara Rose. We connected over the internet. She emailed me or messaged me on Instagram, and we had a lot of mutual friends. She's very into Ayurveda. She actually wrote The Idiot's Guide for Ayurveda, which we talk about a bit, how that unfolded in this episode. And if you're new to Ayurveda, you're going to learn all about it in this week's episode. And if you are very familiar with Ayurveda, we talk about it from a really unique perspective. Sahara has a really interesting backstory. We're around the same age, and she has this crazy story for talking about manifestation and thinking your reality, and how she connected to Deepak Chopra and how she got into this work. It's really fascinating, and we have so much in common, and it was just a really serendipitous, magical conversation that I had a couple weeks ago. She's in LA and I'm in New York, and we talked over Skype for a really long time. We edited this out, but we actually had to be like, this is great and I want to keep talking, but we both really had to pee, so we took a bathroom break and we sat back down and kept talking for like another hour. It was fantastic, and I learned so much from this episode. It's fitting that it's a really robust episode with a lot of information, but it's also a good dialogue, exactly how I want this podcast to be. I hope you like it, and I want to get to it as quickly as possible. But just firstly, again, 200 episodes. I don't know, it feels like a big deal. So thank you again so much for listening. And before I thank the sponsors, I just want to thank you guys. I had 2 events this past week, which was crazy and not planned, and I was worried that no one was going to come to either of them, or everyone would come to one and not the other, but it was so much fun meeting listeners. I had one at Springbone. Last week's guests, the founders, had us at their space. They had the Katie Toast free for everyone, and everyone got a free bone broth, my favorite bone broth, which is the vegan bone broth that is made with mushrooms, and I add turmeric and ginger to it. So everyone got one of those, and they got my toast, which is gluten-free bread with coconut oil, like a lot of coconut oil, and sea salt and cinnamon, and it's sweet and delicious, and everyone got to eat that and talk to each other, and it was a blast. I had so much fun. I love Sam and Jordan, and I was so grateful that they had us. And then on Saturday, just 3 days later, because that was on a Thursday, I had another event at Divya's Kitchen. It's an Ayurvedic restaurant, actually, in the East Village. And Divya is this beautiful person. She's the executive chef, and she's the author of the amazing cookbook. And their restaurant is one of my favorite places in New York City. It's calm, it's beautiful. You'll hear all about it because we recorded a live podcast episode in the morning, and then we all stayed for brunch. It was so beautiful. It was my friend Laura's birthday, and I got to meet new people I haven't met before that listened to the podcast, which was lovely. We talked about Ayurveda. I ate really well with Ayurveda this weekend. I just had some really great Ayurveda food, not even meaning to. I had these beautiful lentil flour waffles at Divya's Kitchen in the morning, and then I ended up leaving something there that day, and I went around the city. I was doing a bunch of things, and so I happened to be walking by on my way home, and I realized I left something there, so I went in, and I ended up getting takeout. So I had Divya's Kitchen for basically all my meals that day, which was lovely. I had this bowl of vegetables and quinoa, and it was also delicious. So I'm going to stop telling you about what I ate this weekend and just say I'm so grateful to everyone who left their house and came to my events this weekend. It was so much fun meeting Haley and Becca and Joelle. And Joelle, okay, quick story about Joelle. She told me this was my favorite story of someone listening to the podcast ever, and I've gotten a lot of really great ones. But she ran the marathon in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago. She lives in New York City. She just moved here from Montreal, and she was saying that she found my podcast somewhat recently in the past year. Apparently some person in France also listens to the podcast and made a vlog about or mentioning the podcast in French, so thank you to whoever that was. And that's how Joelle found the podcast. So she's been listening. She's been going into the archives. And she said she kind of started it at the beginning of the archives and was trying to kind of make it to the end. But then she was like, okay, I just kind of want to skip to the front and see where she is now. So she did this all while she was training and running the Philadelphia Marathon. She listened to me the entire time she was running the marathon. And she said sometimes she would listen to me on double speed, which you can do on your phone, and it would help her run faster. And then she got to, at the end of her marathon, it was getting kind of challenging, and so she got to the episode from about a year ago with me and my best friend from college, Katie, her name's also Katie, talking about my move to New York and me doing it, and I don't know if I'm going to, and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, yes, do it. And she knew that I actually did do it, and it helped her to run faster at the end of the marathon, which I thought was so inspiring. And also I cringed a little bit thinking that is a lot of time for someone to hear me talking for however many hours a marathon is. And then the bigger thought that I had was that is the closest I will personally ever get to running a marathon myself. So anyway, thank you, Joelle. Thank you for letting me share that story. I didn't ask you, but I'm assuming you'll be okay with it. Hopefully we're friends after this many hours we've spent with each other. Okay, well, that was a lot. I love you guys so much. If you do like this podcast, please share it with a friend. Please leave a review on iTunes if you haven't already. That would be the best 200th episode anniversary present you could give me. If you want to be part of the community more, joining our private Facebook group is the best way to do that. And also, every so often, I send an email out to everyone of my meanderings, my thoughts, my feelings, and links I've been loving around the web, things I've been listening to, watching. I just share them. So that comes out I used to say monthly, but it's so not monthly. And that's the only emails that I send. Except once a year, I do a gift guide, which is just about to come out this week. But check out the gift guide if you want that. It's free. It's just things that I would want to give as presents and I would like to receive as a present myself. So that's available. I love you guys so much. I'm so grateful. And speaking of being grateful, tis the season to be grateful. And I am so grateful to Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene is one of our sponsors this week. They are a quarterly book subscription service that brings the most celebrated books of the season directly to your doorstep. It's a literary box that speaks to your soul each season. It elevates the print book to the luxury status it so dearly deserves. There are 3 subscription types depending on how often you want books delivered. And as a member of the Coeur d'Alene community, you'll receive early access to the most celebrated, anticipated books of the season, exclusive member benefits, special literary perks. And the best part is they are owned by one of my favorite people in the world, Elizabeth, and she has a background in contemporary art. So every box, she invites an artist to create a limited edition print so she gets to combine her 2 passions for literature and visual art. And let me just tell you guys, the packaging is spectacular. This is really, really great for holiday season because this would be a great gift for someone who's a reader in your life. You can get a single box for them or a subscription. Please check it out. The code is for 25% off your first collection or your first subscription. And so use the code LetItOut25 for using that code for 25% off. That's CoeurD'AleneBooks.com. Use the code LetItOut25. Supporting the sponsors supports the podcast, and it means a lot to me and them. So thank you so much, Coeur d'Alene. Thank you for listening. And also this week, thank you so much to Care of Vitamins. I love Care of. They are the vitamins and supplements that I take that I love. Sometimes it's hard to get all of the nutrients that you need, and Care of can help fill those gaps with really high quality supplements. And the best part is you go to their website and you take a simple quiz answering questions about what you eat, your sleep, your energy levels, how often you poop, how your skin is, and from there it curates a vitamin pack handmade for you, which is great because it comes to you to your doorstep in the most beautiful packaging, much like Coeur d'Alene in that way, and it's personalized. It even says your name, and it's great for travel because they come in these little personalized packs of exactly what you need each day. There's no waste. I love them, and I think you will too. If you want to check them out, you can get 50% off of your first order. That's 50. You heard that right. Half off of your first order by using the code Katie at checkout. That's Katie. That's my name at checkout. So go to takecareof.com, enter the code Katie, and try Care of for half off. Thank you, Care of. Thank you, Coeur d'Alene, and thank you for listening. 200th episode, you guys. Here it is, Sahara Rose. Talk to you after. I'm so excited to share you with everyone that listens to my podcast now too, and just ask so many questions because I love Ayurveda and I have so many questions about it. It's been like in my world for several years now, but I haven't fully immersed myself in it at all like you have, and your book is amazing. I was going through it this morning. I took the quiz. I had a ball, and I have so many questions for you. I have like copious notes, and Yay. I'm excited to just dive in. So thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to answer them and to just share this with your community. Because, yeah, it's like something that people have heard of, but like, it's so overwhelming sometimes that they're like, I don't really know about Ayurveda. So I just like to make it as simple as possible.
Yeah. And you do a really great job with that. And what I also liked was, it's like there are so many diets and there are so many ways of being, and not even diets, like eating strategies and intuitive eating and all of these things. And Ayurveda, in a way, is another one of those. But I loved hearing you on this other podcast where I felt like I really got to know you, because you had such a grounded approach to it. It wasn't cheesy. It wasn't like, obviously you're very passionate, but you're flexible, and you're really about modernizing Ayurveda, which I want to get into. And I just liked you so much. I want to be your friend.
Aww.
This is fantastic.
Yay, we'll totally be friends.
Great. Okay, so I've been liking starting the podcast before we dive into Ayurveda and your past and how you got into it and the future and your goals and aspirations and what you have coming up. I like to start in the present. So Where are you today? What have you been realizing, contemplating, thinking about, pondering in the last day, week, or month?
Well, right now I'm writing my next book. It's called Eat, Feel Fresh, which is like a huge coming around, because I started blogging as Eat, Feel Fresh 7 years ago, and then I kind of put that brand away because I was like, I want to be more than just food. I want to talk about other things. And like this is like, I feel like kind of like closing that chapter in a way, because I did so much work. I wrote a book before Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda called Eat Right for Your Mind Body Type, which was about like sports nutrition with Ayurveda and like endomorph, mesomorph, ectomorph, and how they're vata, pitta, kapha. And I wrote literally thousands of recipes that like finally now I'm like writing this book, and and I've just been like, the way that I write books is like when I'm in it, I'm in it. Like I will get it done in a short amount of time. If not, I will drag it on forever. So right now I'm like in it, in that writing that book process. And right before we were doing the call, like I'm starting the book with a story of myself that I had never told before. And I had really bad asthma as a kid. And it was caused from the foods that I was eating. So it's like so interesting right now, like going back there and like also just like letting yourself like feel that pain that you felt as a kid that, you know, you never really thought about. Like, for example, I couldn't play outside when I was a kid because I would get asthma attacks. So my childhood was essentially robbed from me the moment that I was diagnosed. I was playing outside with my cousins, and by that point, so I grew up Persian. My family's from Iran, and I'm the first person in my family to be born in the United States. So I didn't speak English when I started kindergarten. I ate only Persian foods. You know, it was all very new to me. And I remember
What are Persian foods like?
Yeah, it's a lot of stews. It's very similar to Ayurvedic foods because a lot of Ayurveda is actually influenced from the Persian culture, because the Persians actually built like the Taj Mahal in like northern India. It's all the Mughal Empire. So it's super similar, but it's like less spicy. There's no spicy food. It's more like herb based.
Okay.
And then a lot of like pomegranates and walnut and things like that. So I remember it was the first day of kindergarten, and I was so embarrassed to start school because I looked different from everyone. I didn't speak good English, and everyone pulls out their lunch boxes, and they have like Barbies and like Dalmatians and like all these like cool lunch boxes. And like my mom like packed me like a brown paper bag with like a glass container with like aluminum foil over it, because that's just how they pack things. And inside of it, I had this herbal stew, which is like dried limes and kidney beans and like different like simmered, slow cooked herbs, which is like not sexy food.
Yeah.
So I open it up, and it has a strong smell to it, and all of the kids look at me and they're like, "What are you eating? What is that?" And I was mortified because I didn't want them to pay any attention to me. Now they're all staring at me. So I was like, this is gourmet sabzi with khiyar, which is cucumbers, and like
sounds delicious. First of all,
right.
I'd like some of that right now.
Right, but like no one brings in like a full cucumber stick, and then they're like, "Let's see what it is," and they like open the top, and it's like brown, and they're like, "You're eating poop stew," and I knew what the word poop was, and I was like, "Oh my god, they think I'm eating poop." So I was like, "No, not poop, it's stew, it's stew," and they're like, "Poop stew," and after that day, I told my mom, I'm like, I am never letting you pack my lunch again. And from there, I I got interested in junk food because of the toys, like I was like, I'm not going to this grain legume weird section that was like the root cause of like all of my embarrassment. Like I'm going to go to the toy aisles, which is like the cereal and like the shark bites. And she was like, well, she doesn't know like how to pack these American lunches, and she wanted me to be happy. So I found Lunchables, and they were like, they have like a little ham and cheese sandwich and like a juice box and
the
like
little
it was all
red
packed.
stick to spread your pizza sauce.
Exactly. So
I
was
grew up
like,
on those too.
perfect. I was like, perfect. This is like a lunch box. It's a lunch. It's everything in one. There's no packing involved. There's no spill that's going to happen. So I just started bringing Lunchables. And the next day I came to school and they like saw me with Lunchable and they like ignored me. And I was like, perfect. But that started my junk food addiction. And I started, like going to McDonald's because they gave me a free toy. And if I wanted the other color toy, then I'll also eat the chicken fingers. And, there's games on the back of this fruit by the foot. So I'll eat them so I can play the games and the things that they do. And I've just recently been thinking about like, wow, like it's such a huge marketing scam to these kids, and it makes you become addicted to it. And once you have like high fructose corn syrup running through your veins, you're not going to go back to cucumber sticks. Right. So that's what I've been thinking about a lot recently.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, it's crazy how mean children can be. And my very good friend who's been on the podcast multiple times, her name's Sasha Jones, and she was a teacher and used to lead camps here in New York City for kids. And she has this great line that she says to her, and she's also a holistic health coach and into, things that are unusual for the mainstream to eat. And so she made up this phrase that she gives to her kids, and I think you'll love this, and it's "Don't yuck my yum." Which I think is so important. And I used to be self-conscious of, the foods that I was eating, not as a kid, because I was probably one of those kids that had the normal food because my mom was working and moving so quickly and didn't have time to make my lunch. And the only things I remember having for lunch were those Smucker's crustless sandwiches.
Oh my God, those? Yeah. And you'd like microwave them.
Yeah, I don't even think she did that. I think she just put one out of the freezer, put it in my lunch bag for the day, and like by the time it was lunch, it was like half frozen, which was like good enough.
My God.
And
yeah,
then,
I love those from Costco.
Yeah, probably. And then the Lunchables and like the packs of, I remember her buying at Target like big like a huge pack of a bunch of those individual size like chips and Doritos or whatever. And I like hated it. I wanted more than anything a homemade sandwich or like a turkey sandwich or something. We always want what we like don't have. But I think I love that phrase of like, don't yuck my yum, because then as I got older and then I got into like wellnessy things, and next thing I know I was eating like seaweed and raw sauerkraut and raw vegan whatever, and I would bring my own lunch to college and I would have people like, what is that? And I was so self-conscious and I didn't want people to judge me for whatever I was eating. That phrase would resonate with that too. So I think no matter what, it goes back to like not judging other people's plates, and what I love so much about Ayurveda is it really, more than any other way of eating, honors our bio-individuality and how different we are as human beings. And I think that phrase in what you went through is so perfect for that, of like, we're all different, and what works for you won't work for me, what won't work for whoever's listening. And there might be similarities, but there's differences. We have different DNA, we have different body types, we have different histories and what we've been through, and we carry all of that in our bodies. So anyway, don't yuck my yum, hashtag for this episode. It just made me think of that. And then I want to pick up on your asthma and going back to that. So you said that you were really an indoor kid. How did you realize that what you were eating was affecting that? Because my boyfriend had asthma really bad as a kid as well. And same thing. He sounds very similar to you. Was like an indoor kid. He wanted to like be inside and like play video games more because it was hard to be outside. Can you talk about that experience and what that was like for you?
Yeah, exactly. So as I started eating more junk food, I couldn't run. So I remember like on the days, like, you have to like run a mile like once a year in school.
Yeah.
And I would like pretend to be sick, like do anything so I wouldn't have to like, I can't run a mile without like stopping for snacks, like impossible.
Yeah, I can't even do that now.
Right. So that made me, as I was gaining weight, I was becoming lazier. My personality shifted. Like, before, like me and my mom would put like strawberries on our skin and like turmeric and all these things. And I was like, all that stuff's gross. I want to watch MTV Spring Break. And like, you change. And since I was spending so much more time indoors, just that disconnection between me and nature really started to become more apparent. And I was playing outside one day and I just couldn't see out of an eye. And my brother looked at me, he's like, "You look like a monster." So I go inside and I see my face is like totally swollen. Like I do look like a monster. And my parents look at me and they're like, "What just happened?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I was standing. The last thing I saw was a bee and now my face is like this." So they figure I must have gotten stung by a bee on my eyelid because there's just no other explanation for like how someone's face can suddenly get so swollen. So I go back outside to tell my brother to like be careful of the bees, and then I can't breathe. And I feel like literally like a fish out of water. And my cousin had just gone fishing and he had just like killed a fish, and I remember like watching it suffocate in the air, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's happening to me right now." It was like you're breathing out of a straw. And after that, we went to the emergency room where we spent for hours. I literally thought I was going to die. And they were like, "No, there's no bee sting, but you have asthma and pollen allergies, and you have to use this inhaler and take antihistamines and eye drops, and like, yeah, you can't go outside anymore," like casual. And afterwards we had to like, tell school like she can't play outside in recess. She can't go to birthday parties. My life drastically changed. And during this time, my mom would tell me, she's like, "It's because you're not going outside. You've become allergic to the air. How come someone can become allergic to air? It's impossible. It's because of your
impressions."
Yeah. And I was like, "Mom, you're crazy. How could my diet have anything to do with asthma?" And she's like, "Trust me, I know it. I know it's your food." And she would tell the doctors, and the doctors are like, "No, ma'am, like this happens to kids. We see it all the time. There's no correlation between your diet and allergies. It's an antihistamine response to like a potential pathogen." And they start like going into the science response. She's like, no, it's because of nature. And she would tell me, eat foods that have traces of pollen in it, which are like the exact foods the doctors would tell me not to eat. So like almonds and nectarines and local apples. And I'm like, "Mom, literally you're trying to kill me right now." And she's like, "You need to go outside. Even if you have the asthma attack, you need to go outside." And I was like crying. I was like, "I'm not going. It's so painful." And, like I wouldn't sleep at night because I was just coughing and wheezing, and like then go to school the next day just so exhausted. And I just literally would feel miserable for myself. I was like, why am I suffering from this crime that I like literally did not commit? And yeah. And then when I was like probably 12 or 13, this continued for years. I was just like, this is me. I'm a girl with asthma. And then when I was like 12 years old, I wanted to lose weight. And because I wanted to lose weight, I went to a hot yoga class because I read in Cosmo magazine that
old.
Yeah, so I read in Cosmo magazine hot yoga can help you lose weight. So I started practicing like hot prana power yoga when I was 12, and I like became hooked. And I lost weight. I became a vegetarian. I started reading the Bhagavad Gita, and
wow, this is at 12.
At 12, so it was like way before it was popular. And I just loved the way that it made me feel. It made me feel connected to my body for the first time. And I spent, my whole childhood being disconnected, playing with Sims, playing with Roller Coaster Tycoon, instead of actually going and doing those things outside. So through the yoga, I started to lose weight. I started to eat healthier. And then my allergies would get less and less and less. And, eventually I went down the other path. I became a raw vegan. So I only ate raw foods, and I started a raw vegan blog, and this is like now in college. And I also suffered from eating disorders. I used raw veganism as a mask for an eating disorder as well. And then I went down the other way of
heard
being
that one
too
before.
healthy. Right. Yeah. And then, losing my period, like having like a BMI of like 15, like.
Did we talk about this on, because I did your podcast recently. Did we get into this on?
I don't think I know, like I've listened to your podcast on this, but I don't talk about it that much. But
anyway, it's like almost identical to my college experience. So just go on. I'm just like, yep. And I think we're around the same age, right? You're almost 27?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm 27. So anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it showed me that the moment that I realized that my foods can impact how I feel, that I can cure myself from allergies, then it made me realize, wow, I can do anything from changing my food. So
Mm-hmm.
I can become the fittest person ever and I can look like this and that. And then it became a power trip.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then it
I
became
recognize
like,
that.
yeah, like everything is around food, super fearful of anything that was not on like whatever my diet was at that time. And they were like random ass diets that like don't even make sense. But I'm like, I'm only eating Greek salad. Like what? So,
Wow.
so having that experience as a kid, so it was a kapha imbalance, and we can talk more about the doshas. I suffered from a kapha imbalance. Kapha is earth energy.
Yeah, I want
So,
to get into all of that, but let's stick on your story for a quick second.
yeah,
So
so
going back to when you were 12 and you go to that yoga class, what was the reaction from your family, from your friends at that time? Was that, it seems like a not common thing for a 12-year-old to be doing. What was that reaction? Were you involved in other things? What was that like with your friend group?
yeah, so the yoga, they thought, it's some sort of exercise she's doing, like she definitely needs to lose the weight, so like go for it. But then, like in school, I would come dressed as like Gandhi, and I wanted to become a nun. I wanted to join Mother Teresa and like live in the center of leprosy in Calcutta. And I wanted to become a human shield and join the Peace Corps. And I started, like telling my mom I was at a bat mitzvah and like go to like, the hood of downtown and like be like going to homeless shelters. And like I literally changed as a human being. And
Wow.
I had this urge inside of me that I needed to travel. And I had traveled, but like I needed to go by myself. I wanted to live in the most rural areas. I wanted to just literally be one with earth. So finally, my mom, when I was 15, let me go with an NGO to Costa Rica. That was the first place I went, and I worked at a prison, and I lived in the orphanage part of the prison, and I was helping the orphans whose moms were incarcerated. And then I found a trip to Nicaragua to build a preschool, and then I went to Vietnam, and I was teaching victims of who had experienced Agent Orange. So they were like blind, mute, but they were still working in factories. And I was teaching worker rights. I went to Thailand, and I was like the first person they've seen who's not Thai. This is like way up in the mountains where like there are like a lot of long-necked people. And I was just like living with rice farmers, working in the farm, like building, teaching. And that became my
Wow.
path. And then I wanted to become an international human rights lawyer for child sex exploitation. And so I moved to DC to study that. And that was my plan. And then while I was in DC, I'm pulling all-nighters. I'm just trying to study. I'm working at NGOs, and I'm realizing I'm working so hard and I'm not helping people. I'm just raising money for the next fundraiser. And I don't want to spend my time in front of a computer on spreadsheets. I want to be on the ground helping people. So
Yeah.
I got super like depressed because I was like, oh, well, this one thing that I worked towards, like to be an international human rights lawyer, is not working for me. So what am I going to do? And that's when I just became so confused. Like every day I'd have like a new personality, a new idea. Like I'm going to move to Dubai. Like, no, now I'm going to work in the makeup industry. Like I kept just changing what I wanted to do. A lot of vata going on. And that's when food became like that thing that I could control. And I became like raw vegan and really obsessed with that because all other parts of my life were like up in the air. I transferred.
Yeah.
I left GW because I was so depressed. And literally, I remember like having days like me and my roommate were horrible influences on each other. Like I would be like, I only ate samples from Whole Foods today. She's like, nice one. And like that was like our way of being like, go girl, you got this. And it was just such a dark path that I moved back to Boston just to be closer to my family and figure out what's going to happen. And then I met this girl from India who became my roommate. And I went to India because I wanted to volunteer there, just like teaching English in the slums. And when I got to India, I was still a raw vegan in India, which was like unheard of. And eventually after like probably 8 months there, so once I went to India, I was like, this is my place. Like, I'm staying here forever. And I got super sick. And I had heard about Ayurveda and like IIN, and I had heard it around. I thought it was like interesting how there's like a quiz and you take your food according to the quiz, but I never thought there was any validity to it. And I didn't like any of the suggestions. I was a raw vegan. It was like ghee and lentils and rice and like all of these heavy foods I would never eat. But I was so desperate because I had such bad digestive issues, hormonal issues, and I had tried everything that Ayurveda was like, it's like, what can I lose now? I'll just see what she has to say.
Yeah.
So that's how I came to Ayurveda.
Wow. So before you went to India, you studied at IIN, Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and learned about all sorts of diets?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. So I was at that point at BU, and I wanted to, like, I had done a raw nutrition course with David Wolf, and I was like very into the raw stuff. And I had started my blog, and my blog became like an online magazine. So I did IIN not really to be a health coach, but just to like learn more about the nutrition world. And Ayurveda was just like one of the many subjects that they mentioned.
Got it.
And, but I really didn't look past it. It was just sort of like, oh, that's cool. Moving on.
Right. Okay. So then you go to India, and you're there, and you have some awareness of what Ayurveda is, and you're essentially like, well, this is not for me. I'm a raw vegan, but when in Rome, I'll go talk to this woman.
Yeah,
Literally,
I thought it was like a
India.
Psychic.
Yeah. So you
like, she's going to take my pulse and tell me my fortune. I was like, oh, this could be cool. So she takes my pulse, my tongue, and, asks me all these questions, like, what kind of dreams do you have? I'm like, oh, this is like about my period. Why are you asking me about my dreams? And like, like, what are the foods that you crave? And like this, that, like all these weird ass questions. And I was like, okay, sure. And she tells me that I have such a severe vata, which is like air imbalance, that at that point I was infertile. My body had gone into menopause when I was 21 years old. And I was at the risk of osteoporosis and later on Alzheimer's. And that was a huge shock for me, because there I was thinking I'm like the healthiest person ever. I'm a health coach. I got a blog. And everything that I'm doing was actually causing these problems of only eating raw foods, of exercising so much, of being afraid of any sort of oil, like don't bring oil, don't bring salt near me. And all of these things were actually causing my issue. But I was like, so what do I do about this? And she's like, well, you have to eat the ghee and the dal and the rice and no more raw food, beta, ever again. And I was like, no, like absolutely not. There's no way I'm going to eat this stuff. So then I put it aside again. And I was like, Ayurveda is not for me, but I definitely need to take more of a look into my own personal health.
So what did you do then? Did you go back to the States? Did you go back to Boston? What happens next?
Yeah. So I went back to Boston, and I went to gastroenterologist. I went to endocrinologist. I got every blood test under the sun. And
because you're not feeling good at this point. You have no period. You're underweight, I'm assuming.
Right. Cold all the time, like next level cold, like shivering, like who's cold in India? And so bloated, like I would eat something and not just like I look bloated, but my stomach would severely hurt. Like let's say I ate something a little off. I drank coconut water after my meal. I'm on the couch just like wailing in pain.
Oh, yes. I know. So, this all sounds very familiar.
Yes. So constipated. I'm eating so much kale, not pooping for days. My fingers are trembling all the time. Like I'm up until 4 a.m. every single night. Like all of these things that now I'm like, oh, textbook vata. But before I was like, how could all these things be connected? Thirsty all the time. Like no amount of water would ever be enough. So they gave me all these blood tests. I did not have thyroid issue. I did not have PCOS. I did not have any of these things, but my estrogen levels were at 0. So my body was not producing estrogen. So they said I had hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is basically like something in your mind is causing you to not have a period. And their suggestion was microwave tubs of ice cream and drink it so you can get in lots of calories at once.
Gross.
And maybe that will help. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get diabetes now.
Yeah, and that sounds like it would give me a headache and a stomach ache. Yeah. Like eating ice cream, fine, but
they just wanted me to get like the whole tub in. But like imagine that's how we diagnose hypothalamic amenorrhea.
That is terrible. Yeah. When I was in eating disorder treatment, they really wanted me to have like 4 or 5 of those bathhouse drink, those what I'm talking about, those like smoothie things like Adwala and Bathhouse.
Oh, yeah.
They were like, just eat normally and have like 12 of these a day on top of whatever you're eating or something. And I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So interesting.
At all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tried, then I was like, I'm going to do anything. I'll go paleo, I'll do GAPS diet, I'll do autoimmune protocols. Like, I tried everything. And so I tried eating meat for the first time in almost 10 years, and it just wasn't really resonating with me, and I just didn't know what to do. So finally I was like, okay, I'll listen to some of these Ayurvedic suggestions, but do it my own way. So instead of rice, maybe I'll eat quinoa, and instead of ghee, maybe I'll use coconut oil, and maybe I'll just like bake some sweet potatoes and have them with some sunflower seed butter, and just like ways that I was more warming foods.
Sounds
more
delicious.
Yeah, and these are foods that I still eat all the time. And instantly I felt so much better, not just in my body, but in my mind. Like I was able to sleep. Like my mind was not all over the place. Like I was actually able to focus on, I realized like I love nutrition. I was able to focus and build on it. Whereas before, Vata energy, it's like the wind. It's like sparse. It's moving all over the place. And when I saw that effect happening on me, I realized there's a lot more to this than I had thought. So I decided the next time I would go back to India that I would take a course just to learn more about it, like a 1-week course. So I take this course in Delhi, and literally the moment I started learning about it, it was like relearning a language that I used to speak. Like so many of the things that she said, it was like, I already know this. And probably it was related to my upbringing of just hearing these things, but I truly believe it was like past lives as well, because Sanskrit words were coming to me, like theories that don't make sense to people. Like if even today, someone has a specific problem, I know the Ayurvedic approach to it, even though I had never specifically learned about that thing. So it was just coming to me so fast. And it was like, when you get like a download, like a spiritual download, and it's like a wave of things. So it was like just that was happening to me, and it was almost like I couldn't keep up, and I just needed to write this down. So instantly I knew I need to write some sort of book that will translate Ayurveda into modern language to help people like me who are not going to come to India, who don't want to eat Indian food for the rest of their lives, but still want to balance their lives using these principles.
Yeah.
So
I would like to eat Indian food for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean, Indian food can be super healthy, and it can also be like the heaviest, creamiest.
Totally. I actually don't want it. I take that back. It is delicious, and I'm hungry for dinner, so I said that, but I wouldn't want to eat it for the rest of my life.
Right. And I mean, it's like also like flavor-wise, it's like a lot of spices going on at once.
There's a lot. Yeah.
That was a joke.
Yeah,
like sometimes you just want something simple and bland, and I was like, how can I still eat these foods that I love but still follow Ayurveda? So I decided I would write this book, thinking it's going to be an ebook for my website, and the book, and then I continued to just study with her, and I was studying one-on-one with this doctor in Delhi, and I spent the next 2 years going back and forth to India studying with her, writing my book, which from 50 pages became 100 pages, 500 pages, 1,000 pages, over 2,000 pages of material I had written, translating Ayurveda into modern day text, infusing holistic nutrition, sports nutrition, scientific research, all of the things. So once this was done, I was like, well, now what do I do with this? And that was like super anxiety causing, because I was like, so while this was going on, people were not like, go you, like Ayurveda. My parents were like worried for me. They're like, you lost your mind. What are you doing? Like no one knew what this was, 6 years ago, literally no one, even in India, people were not talking about Ayurveda. So it was like I was literally like go swimming up a river, or whatever that saying is, but something kept calling me like, you need to write about this.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is going on with your personal health and wellness at this time? Are you starting to feel better and get your Vata more in balance, which we'll get into what that is? And then I know on my podcast, I told the story of how my book came to be, which is kind of a magical story, and you have a very similar magical story. So what happens next with the book, and then simultaneously, what is happening with you physically during all of this?
Yeah, so while this was happening, I was still very passionate about being a vegan at the time. So, which I'm not anymore. But at that time I was like, so that was like, still, I had a lot of this, like, it needs to still be a certain way. And now I've learned that with vatas, it doesn't work as well for them to be vegan. And when I stopped being a vegan, that's when my period came back. So that didn't fix until a really long time. But I did feel more energetic. My digestion got better. I felt a lot, just, being able to eat something and move on, not just having to like sit there and like digest and like hold my belly for a while. And for my book, it was hard because I didn't have editors or anyone to bounce ideas off of. I didn't even know anyone that knew about Ayurveda. So it was just me on my own, just writing. And the more I started writing, I was like, I need to just immerse myself in this. And with my parents, it was very hard because they were like, you need to get a normal job, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? So I moved down to South India by myself, and I lived in a hut for 6 months.
Wow.
And I was totally by myself, and I just wrote. And then I went to Bali, and I spent 4 months there. And I just wrote, practice yoga, and then spend the rest of the day writing. And I loved it because no one spoke English. No one could bother me. And I just went so deep in my thoughts, and also rethinking everything in my life. Like why do I behave the way I do? And just like how many of my thoughts were like placed on me from my family and were like not truly mine.
Yeah.
Like, most random things, like if you like a boy, ignore him. Like, why would you do that? And just so many things, as well as like being a Persian, it's like a lot of like, be private. Like if you show anyone that you're successful, they're gonna evil eye you. Like never show anyone that you're happy. Like always make yourself appear like you're miserable. Like that's actually what you're taught. And I was like, wait, this is not the way I want to live. So It was a time of a lot of shedding. And even though like you would think it's so beautiful, you're like living on a beach, it was like the most difficult time of my life.
Wow, that sounds like really like going into the eye of the storm, and like the only way out is through, and you just like, did it and handled it. So then you come back from living in the hut, you have this book. How does it get published, and how do you make it what it is now? That I heard you tell that story, which is so fascinating.
Yeah, so this is like, I so believe in the power of tribe. Like there's only so much you can do by yourself, but it really comes down to like your friends and who you know. And I came back and I was like, oh, I don't want to live in America. There's shopping malls. Like I only came back because my mom was so upset and scared for me, that I was just like, okay, I'll just come back just to let her know I'm safe. So I couldn't be around her though. Like it was just too much. I couldn't be around someone telling me how to live my life. So I grew up in Boston. So my grandparents live in Los Angeles, and they had an extra bedroom in their apartment. So I was like, okay, I'll go and help them with their groceries and like live with them until I figure out what I'm going to do. I just keep writing my book, and they weren't going to bother me or make me pay rent. So I was like, perfect.
That's very convenient and a very cool place to have grandparents.
Yes. So like literally all meant to be. So as I'm in Los Angeles, I start making friends with like bloggers and people in the industry. And I met my friend Maria Marlowe, who I think you might know. I don't know if she's been on your podcast. I
definitely know the name. I feel like we've either met or emailed or something, but great name. And I feel like I know her. And
yeah,
I
would
connect
like you
to.
Guys.
Cool.
Yeah, she lives in New York. So,
oh, cool. Yeah. Let's be friends.
Yeah. So I met her, and she had a book that was going to be coming out, and we became friends. And I like asked her, I'm like, how does one go about writing a book? Like, what's the first step? Like, I finished mine. I hired editors and graphic designers, and like, I don't know what to do with it. And she's like, well, the first thing that you need is to find a literary agent. You can't just like, because I was sending my book to publishers, like I really didn't know what to do. And she's like, you need to have a literary agent, otherwise the publishers are not going to respond. I have a literary agent, she has a lot of clients, and she, I'm not sure if she's even taking on new people, but I'll email you guys and connect you. So she did that, and I've sent the literary agent my finished book, and she loved it. And she loved how, I took such initiative to, a lot of people come with like a kind of like idea, like I sort of want to write about this. And I was like, nope, here it is, like 300-page book, start to finish graphic design.
Yeah, not a
put it on your shelves.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So she was like, we'll look for publishers. We'll send your book proposal out to people. And we signed the contract that we would work together. And she started sending it out to people that I'm receiving, like, the market's not really there yet, or she's a first-time author. We don't really take first-time authors. She's too young, this, that. And I was like, nope, this book's going to happen. It's going to be on the shelves of Barnes & Nobles one day. And 2 days after I'd signed the contract with her, she gets a call from Penguin Random House, and they're looking for someone to write the Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, like the official Idiot's Guide, like Idiot's Guide to Gardening or Mowing Your Lawn, or like they have Idiot's Guides to everything. And now they wanted an Ayurveda one because it was a topic that people are Google searching more. Yeah. So they had someone who was 4 months into her 6 months and was like, you know what, I can't do this. It's too much work. And she quit and she didn't turn anything in. So they needed someone to start to finish write this book in 2 months. So she tells them that she knows someone, and they're like, I don't know, she's too young, but we'll just see what she has to say. So they send me the table of contents that woman had worked on, and they're like, how would you edit this? If not, you can just send it back. You have a week to do this. And I was like, it's go time. And I changed that entire table of contents. Like, not a single word or structure was the same. And I sent it back to them that day. Wow. And they were like, okay, well, that's super fast. And the same thing, how you were on that deadline, you just pulled through. It's like, you need those deadlines sometimes.
Yeah, so totally.
Yeah. And they're like, so you have a week to write that the first chapter, so we can see your writing style. And again, that day I sent it back, first chapter done. And 2 days after that, they hired me. So I went from like literally like no book to writing the Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda with Penguin Random House. But I was like, well, shit. Now I just created the worst competition for myself. No one's going to read my book if I'm writing this book. And how am I going to explain Ayurveda in a totally new way? Because with copyright, I can't even phrase a sentence the same way. So I'm like, wow, this is going to be even harder now. And my heart was still really set on this book. So I'm like trying to figure out how many ways I can say Ayurveda without repeating myself. And it's like so hard. And then finally something came through me like, you know what? Like, just imagine this is the last book you're going to write. Yeah. Put everything you have into it. Like, forget about that book. Like,
somebody told me that too, writing my book, of like, pretend like you're never going to write another book again, because you will get a new idea. You'll think of something new in between that time. And that's such good advice for while you're writing a book, I think.
Right. And I think a lot of us, we think like, oh, yeah, my creativity is only limited, or I can't like give away too much. I need to like keep, some stuff for the next book. And I was like still thinking of that. And once I let go of that, just like, it's just now, put everything you know. And writing that book was a huge learning process for me, because I realized Ayurveda is not just about the nutrition and the digestion and like how to heal your hormones. It's a hugely spiritual system. Yeah. And the reason that we do all of these things is so we can be the best versions of ourselves. So now my favorite chapter of the book, and what I'm the most passionate about, is the last part, like about the spirituality and the mind-body connection, but surpass the mind and body and like the soul, and why the soul's alive. And that's why my podcast is like Your Highest Self podcast. And I'm so grateful to have written that book, because otherwise I would have been so stuck in the like, is this good for your digestion? Is this good for that? Which is important, but the reason it's important is so you can go past that.
Okay. This is amazing. I want to, before we get into more about some interesting, cool things that happened to you, like meeting Deepak Chopra, who wrote the forward for your book, gave you a quote for your book, very magical. I want to get to that at the end, but I think what we need to do right now, immediately, before we get any further, is define what Ayurveda is and get into some minutia of the notes that I have, so people can be in the loop of like what this magical thing we've been mentioning for the last 40 minutes is. So what is Ayurveda? What is your elevator pitch for it to people?
Yeah, so Ayurveda is the world's oldest health system. It originated in India 5,000 years ago. So very, very old, older than Buddha, older than Jesus, older than like anything you can imagine.
Older and it was Chinese medicine, right?
Right. And it's the system that all other health systems are based off of. So even traditional Chinese medicine in year 600 AD, the Chinese scholars came to India, studied the medical system, and brought it back to China, and it became TCM, and it later on moved to Japan, became macrobiotics, and moved the other way west of the Silk Road and went to Egypt, became their form of surgery. It went up to the Roman Empire through like the battles, and it became Materias Medicas, which is like the Greek medical system. So we can trace down almost any health system back to Ayurveda. It's the first system ever, that saw plants as medicine, that saw the human body having these layers and these intricacies and, things that we talk about that we take for granted now are actually all very clearly written in Ayurveda. So that's what Ayurveda is, which is sort of like, but like, how does it make sense? So it's really focused on bio-individuality, as you mentioned, that a food that works for me or an exercise or an herb, anything that works for me might not work for you. But on top of that, if it worked for me last year, it might not work for me today. So we're ever changing entities. And our relationship is a reflection of the natural elements around us. So we're all a combination of the elements, which similar to Chinese medicine, there are 5. There are air, space, fire, water, and earth. And these 5 elements create the 3 doshas. The word dosha means energy. So the 3 doshas are vata, which is air and space. I just like to call it air. Pitta, which is fire and water. I like to just call it fire. And kapha, earth and water, but I just call it earth. So vata, air, pitta, fire, kapha, earth. So we are all a combination of all 3 doshas. We're not just one, we're all 3, but also everything can be described in terms of doshas. So we can talk a little bit more about what that means, but that's really like the bread and butter of Ayurveda.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for going over that. And I love the way you articulate it. You are so smart and articulate, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And I want to talk about how you're modernizing it and some things that we can do to bring into our lives. But I think what will help make this make sense to people is going into the 3 doshas a bit. So I will use myself as an example, if that's cool with you.
Mm-hmm.
You are an Ayurveda practitioner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you learned that while you were in India?
Yeah, then I trained to be an Ayurvedic practitioner in Delhi. I graduated from an Indian college there, and I went down to study with doctors in Kerala and in Goa. So yeah, now I'm studying at the American Institute of Vedic Studies, like advanced Ayurvedic studies.
So cool. So do you work with people one-on-one now?
I was, but at this point I'm just doing like my online programs because it's like a lot of it is the same thing I was repeating to everyone, like, because I have to explain all of this just to get started. So I created like an online 12-week program that has like everything explained.
Cool. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of that here. So we've got these 3 doshas. So in the book and on your website, and I've taken these before I found your work and was just familiar with Ayurveda, and I've had different Ayurveda books and cookbooks because I think it's fascinating. And I've, learned about khichdi cleanses and tried them and all of the above. And I always take this quiz, and I usually get vata, but I know in my intuition that that's not what I am. Like, I know that if I took it because you answer the questions kind of based on your body type and based on, there are some things that don't change, but I really feel like I'm actually kapha, but I have maybe an imbalance, which is making me answer these questions in that way. So I want to get into that, but I want to first, for everyone listening, let's go through the 3 types. So let's start with vata maybe, and you can talk about what it means to be balanced and imbalanced for each type.
Totally, yeah. So, and I'm also kapha prakriti, which is I was born more kapha, now I'm more vata. So we'll talk about that in some really
cool.
common.
Yeah, we can use me as a guinea pig, so that'll be great and self-serving.
For sure. So air. So if you think of like an airy person from like, oh, that guy's really airy. Like, what do you think they're like?
Like forgetful and kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So that's like the negative side of vatas. They can be forgetful. They can be all over the place. They can get really anxious. So vata is wind-like energy, and when there's too much wind, that wind can become like a tornado in the mind. So if you are experiencing insomnia, you can't sleep, you're always thinking of things, you're overthinking, overanalyzing, that's all related
right
to
now,
vata.
for sure.
Right. So that's probably related to the vata imbalance that you have.
Okay.
So, but on the flip side, on the good side, is it's creativity, it's idealism, it's travel, it's wanting to try new things. Like vatas are just so creative
Also
people.
have that.
Yeah. So that's what vata is kind of like in the mind. Now in the body, if I was like, I feel like I have a lot of air, like what do you think that means?
Constipated, bloated, farts are what comes to mind.
Right, exactly.
Burps.
So, yeah, it's literally like air movement in your body. So it's like, like sometimes you might eat like a salad or something and your stomach just like expands.
Yes.
That's vata. It's cold, it's dry, so it's going to have those qualities in your colon, so the bloating, gas, constipation, but also in your body. You're going to feel physically cold. Your hair might come out. You might experience like dark circles under your eyes. Your skin is just like really cold and thin. Maybe you see your veins. Like I remember when I was like really thin, I looked down at my stomach. I'm like, oh my God, I see all my veins. So that's all vata right there. So just think cold, dry, wind-like qualities.
Okay.
Now, pitta is fire. So if I was like, ooh, she's super fiery, what do you think that's like?
Someone who is like hot all the time and moves really quickly and is just like a mile a minute and gets angry very quickly.
Exactly. So that's like a pitta personality to the T. So on the good side, they are hyper focused, they're determined, they're organized, they're go-getters, they're very achievement oriented. But on the other side is, in life you don't always get what you want to get. And then that doesn't really run very cool with them. They're like, they get angry, they get irritable, they get frustrated, they get impatient. It's like, when you're like stuck in traffic and you're like, move. It's like that's how they're going through life, instead of just like surrendering and just being like, okay, I'm stuck in traffic. So that's what pitta's like in the mind. So goal-oriented, ambitious, but also can be angry, like the CEO personality. So vata is more like the artist personality. I like to call it like Steve Jobs energy, whereas pitta is more like the NBA player, like the hotshot lawyer, that sort of thing.
Got it. Okay.
And then in the body, if I'm like, I feel like I have a lot of fire in my body. What do you think that's like?
That is like like I said, hot all the time, acid reflux, heartburn, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so interesting because even in the English language, we say heartburn.
Yeah.
It's like, hello, is burning.
Exactly.
So the digestion is called your Agni. It's called your fire. So if there's too much fire, your stomach's going to secrete too much acid to break down the foods, and it's going to go up your esophagus. It's going to create heartburn, but also it can create ulcers in your stomach. So anything related to just like hyperacidity is pitta related. And heat also rises. It's like, if you're like on a bunk bed, it's always warmer up top than it is on the bottom. So the same thing happens with the body. The heat of the digestive system rises and it tries to escape through our skin, because our skin's our largest organ, and that shows up as acne. So if you have a lot of acne, redness, inflammation of the face, that's all pitta related.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Now, for hearing you talk about all of these, first of all, it's fascinating. But like I said before, and you say this in the book too, that like taking the quiz is not enough. It's really best, ideally, obviously your book will help with a lot of things, but it's ideal to kind of talk this through with an Ayurvedic practitioner like yourself. So for me, I take the quiz and I'm listening to you give those descriptions, and I have a lot from each of those definitions. Like I'll tell you what I got with the quiz. Like I had 12 A's on your quiz, which is vata, and then I had 2 for each kapha and pitta. And I really think back though, to what I was as a kid, and I want to talk about your experience with that too, where I was never like the tall, lanky kid in school. I was one of like the bigger kids. I kind of was like became the size I am now when I was like 9, So I wonder, and I have, like my skin is actually, my hair is really coarse and curly, so I relate to the kapha, I think, with that. And I also have, acne prone skin, and I also can like see my veins a lot, and I got overwhelmingly vata, and I definitely like creative wise and being scattered wise, airy, all of that, I have a lot of vata. So what do you think is going on with me and balance wise, and how do you talk about the imbalances a bit?
Yeah, well, first I'll tell them about kapha, because I didn't describe kapha.
Shoot. Okay.
Yeah, don't worry.
I just got so excited. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed.
It's okay.
I'm so
it's
vata.
Exciting.
I'm so vata.
So kapha is the third one, and it's earth energy. So earthy people in the mind, they talk a little bit more like this.
Yes.
They breathe a lot deeper than the other people. And they have this energy that like you come to them, they don't come to you, It's like they're really grounded in their bodies.
Yes.
And they're feeling it.
I want to be one of them.
Yeah, like I think of like Latham, who's on your podcast.
Yes.
Energy. It's like
that
it's
woman.
Like,
yes.
It's like strong, but not in this like pitta, like I'm gonna run the show. It's like connected, and that's what kapha energy is. I call it Oprah energy. It's like a kapha person is like, you want to just come and give them a hug and tell them your problems, and they're just gonna pat your back and tell you everything's gonna be okay.
Is that what Deepak is? Would you say?
He has a lot of kapha, but he has a lot of pitta too.
Okay.
He's gone more into, we can do Deepak's after, but he's definitely a pitta. He's a king an archetype is his king for sure. But now that he's older, he's become a lot more kapha. Okay. So kapha energy, it's really grounded, peaceful, calm, nurturing, motherly, just like the earth is like constantly giving to us. It's providing us with resources, and we demolish the earth, and it's like, you know what? I still got you.
Yeah.
Oil, take this tree. So that's what earth is like. But what happens when you keep on taking is that person ends up feeling depleted. So kapha people have a really hard time, just practicing that own self-care. They're making sure everyone else around them is okay, but they lose track of tuning into themselves. And it's because they feel like if, they're not holding everything together, the world is going to crumble down. So I think of it like, your a grandmother energy. Like grandmas are always doing things for other people, but are they really doing everything they need for themselves? Like most of them are not. So, and it's also something that, historically has been taught for, in India, they say always marry a kapha because she's going to be the most motherly and put everyone else's needs before hers. But, that's not, if naturally some of us are more like that, but others of us are not. Yeah. So kapha, though they are the friendliest, most loving, warm people, they're also most likely to get depressed.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so, and this is not written in the Ayurvedic text, but they are the most likely to suffer emotional eating and binge eating problems because they use food as a cope of their own emotions. And, they come back from a stressful day and they just don't know how to deal with everything they're holding on to. So they eat and eat and eat, and they fall deeper into their heaviness, deeper into their kapha, and it becomes harder to get out of it. Now, kapha in the body literally feels this feeling of anchoredness, like a tree like planted into the soil, and it's hard for it to move. So when you've gone really deep into that kapha rut, it's really hard to get out of it. And that's how, depression, it's really hard to move out of, or if you're obese, it's really hard to get out of that. So vata is the dosha that most easily falls out of balance, can most easily fall into balance. Pitta is in between. Kapha, hardest to fall out of balance because it takes time, but also hardest to get back into balance. So
vata?
Kapha.
Kapha.
Yeah, vata is like almost everyone nowadays has some sort of vata imbalance. It's so moving and it's so easy to get your vata out of balance. I think like everyone I talk to has some form of vata imbalance,
Really?
even if they're not. So what you were mentioning before that question, which is an amazing question so many people have, is what if my dosha was different before? Like, what if it changes? What if it's different in the mind than it is in the body?
Yeah.
So those are questions that I had that I was like, wait, Ayurveda doesn't make sense. I can't just be, because when I was taking the quiz, I was like 100% vata, but I can definitely gain weight. Like, I'm not one of those like lanky people
Yes.
either.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Okay. This is like
yeah.
changing my life.
Right. So like how if I eat all these foods, I'll gain more weight. What do I do? So you have your thing called your prakriti. Your prakriti is the doshic constitution that you were born with. And I explain this all in the book. I have a whole chapter dedicated to prakriti vikriti. So
Amazing.
your prakriti is you were born in your DNA, like she was born with blonde hair, she was born with brown hair, green eyes, whatever, as well as personality characteristics. If you have kids or siblings, they're all born a little bit differently. So that's your prakriti, and we have a combination of all three. So let's say you were born primarily more kapha, secondarily more vata, lastly more pitta.
Okay.
Then later on in your life, your diet, your lifestyle, exercise, stress levels, where you live, what season it is, all of these things are going to impact it. And then what you have right now is your vikriti. And your vikriti is always changing. So even as the seasons change, like right now we're in fall, everyone's vata is going to go up because it's cold and dry. But as we go into winter and it gets to become wetter and more heavier, we're going to go into kapha, which is why people gain weight in the winter and want to stay in. And then in the summer, we all become a little bit more pitta. So we have these seasonal shifts. We have these lifelong shifts. As children, we're all naturally more kapha because we're building the blocks for our bodies for the rest of our lives, which is why kids always get like, mucusy and phlegm and coughs and colds. And it's so common as a kid, doesn't really happen as much when you're older because we all have more kapha. Then in your middle ages, we all become more pitta because we're creating our lives. We're, finding jobs, finding spouses, figuring everything out. It's a lot of pressure. So that's going to bring up our pittas. We naturally need more pitta. And then later on in our lives, we become more vata. We become more dry and cold. Our periods stop. Our skin becomes more fragile. We get wrinkly. And a lot of older people, it's like they're kind of not interested in the day-to-day things. Like there's like my grandpa, he's somewhere else. Like he's just like, I just want to write poetry because he's just so vata at this point of his life. So those are the lifespan cycles. So the way that Ayurveda works is we work with the imbalance while also paying attention to your prakriti. So let's say for you and also for me, we were probably born with more kapha. We were born bigger kids. We, could gain weight easily. Maybe you also had like mucus or phlegm or allergies or asthma. That's all kapha related.
I didn't have that, but I was definitely like I like grew up quickly, I felt like.
Right. Yeah. Kaphas tend to get their periods earliest in life.
Yep.
They tend just naturally they like grow larger like breasts, whereas vatas tend to stay like flat. Like I have like more vata in my body. Like I'm not like a large breasted like curvy person.
Same. I
So
have like no boobs.
right. So yeah. So
but I had these same boobs when I was like 10 years old, the size I have right now.
Right. And that's also because like both of us had eating disorders, and that's going to stump the growth of your estrogen and your breast growth, and it's going to change like your body is like maybe if we didn't eat that way, our bodies would look different right now. Like I realize a lot of how I look younger than I am, which is a good thing. But my body also, it doesn't look very womanly and curvy because I wasn't getting estrogen in my body for a really long time. So all of these things affect, this is all in our vikriti. So what Ayurveda says is you have to treat the imbalance that's going on. So let's say like you had a vata imbalance, you're eating a lot of cold foods, salads, you're under eating, over exercising. You need to address that vata imbalance, eating more warm foods, cooked foods, grounded oils, and things like that. But then once you bring that vata into balance, then you can start eating for your prakriti, what you're born with. So it's not like keep eating like that forever and then you start gaining lots of weight and you go back into your kapha. It's like making sure it's balanced. And balance for each person is going to look more differently. Like some people naturally are just going to be more pitta. Like for me, I have to work really hard to get my pitta up. I'm naturally not a pitta person.
Same.
But in work, yeah, in my work and my career, I want to be. So like today I went like boxing and I like, these things that I would never normally want to do. But as I'm doing them, I'm like actually really loving it because it's like, wow, this is a new energy that I don't normally feel of like really just like empowered and like badass and like, like a rap song. Like I feel like that. And I'm like, wow, this feels really good because I'm normally really like, okay, let's just see what happens. So it's like you can tap into these energies and these doshas for whatever you need. Whenever I'm in book writing mode, I tap into that pitta because I need to get shit done. So it's beautiful when you know about it because you can always be assessing in your body of like, what do I need more of? How can I change my diet and lifestyle to gain more of that?
Wow. Okay. This is so fascinating. So if you are someone like us, like me right now in this example of, maybe I don't have the vata energy that I need. I'm just recapping. You focus
pitta energy
that I need.
Yeah.
But also my vata is what's out of balance though, right?
Well, are you experiencing like the bloating, gas, constipation, those issues?
A little bit, yeah. And I'm definitely have the cold all the time thing.
Okay, so being cold all the time is both vata and kapha. They're both cold energies. Vata tends to be more cold and dry, whereas kapha is more cold and oily. So the fact that you have more oily skin, acne-prone skin, that's kapha.
Kapha, okay. This is blowing my mind.
Vatas have super, super dry skin. If you have combination skin, that's kapha. And if you have coarse and thick hair, that's kapha. Vatas have like thin hair, dry.
Okay, I'm definitely kapha. And I think that's why I've been like doing Ayurveda wrong or like so confused about it because every time I've taken a quiz, I get vata 100% basically. But I always knew in my like gut that just wasn't true for me. And I was actually kapha. And now I'm talking to you, this is like what I needed is like an assessment from a professional.
Right. And you're a vata kapha vata. Like sometimes one might be more dominant than the other, but definitely you have more kapha in your prakriti or born with more kapha, but you're experiencing the vata imbalance. Like I don't know if you eat a lot of like cold and raw foods.
Yeah, I do.
Right.
And
so
especially
that's going to cause it. Right. So in the summer, you can get away with more because it's hotter. But if you're noticing that you're gassy, bloated, and constipated, then even in the summertime, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
A lot of things vatas and kaphas have in common. Like they both are recommended to eat cooked foods, whereas with vatas, it's a lot heavier. They need to eat like more like put sesame oil in foods, or Ayurveda traditionally has like ghee. I don't really use ghee or dairy at all. But they do a lot of just like really like heavy foods that probably if you have some kapha, you will be too much. Mm-hmm. So just doing, for example, like roasted veggies. You don't need to like douse them in like oil and ghee on top of that, but just like roasted veggies with like a normal amount of oil that it's cooked in, and just like a macrobiotic bowl or like a curry or something like that would be perfect for both vata and kapha. But what you really need is more pitta, so including more spices in your diet, more ginger, more cumin, turmeric. All of these things, pungent foods, are going to build up the heat in your body.
I love all of that.
Perfect. Yeah. So just like put it in everything, and also know that a lot of them, like turmeric, is fat soluble. So you do want to put it with a fat. Like a lot of people are like, oh, green juice with turmeric. And it's like, oh, it's actually not really absorbed by your body unless it's cooked with a fat, and preferably with black pepper because it's 50% more absorbable.
Fascinating. And I love that. And I needed to know that information because I knew that there was something to that. I knew it was fat soluble, and I know in like a turmeric tonic how it needs to have black pepper. So thank you for explaining that. So going back to a traditional Ayurvedic assessment, I know taking your pulse and looking at your tongue is something that's associated with that. Why those things, and what would traditionally happen if we were in person and you were doing an assessment on me? What are some of those things?
Yeah, so they're not necessary. Like most Ayurvedic like clinics and stuff in India, they don't even do that until later. They ask you with questions, because with the questions you're able to get a lot more. The tongue and the pulse can just kind of go deeper. So your tongue, first of all, just the shape of your tongue will tell you about the prakriti, what you're born with. So like vatas have like more thin tongues, smaller tongues. Pittas tend to have more just like normal size. Kaphas more thick. So just
I want to send you a picture of my tongue now.
Yeah, go for it.
When I see you in person, I'm going to ask you.
For sure. I'll do all the things. So
Amazing.
yeah. And then even your Vikriti. So vatas, if you have a vata imbalance, you have a crack on your tongue. If you look at your tongue, you see a big crack in the middle, vata right there. If you have red on the tip, pitta. If you have a lot of white coating everywhere, that's kapha. And this white coating, it's called ama, toxins. It's like mucus buildup in your digestive system, which is making you basically gain weight, be sleepy, all of these things. And we all have white coating on our tongues. Kaphas just tend to have the most. Even the color of the white coating, like pitta's white coating tends to have a yellow tinge to it, and vatas tends to have more of a gray tinge. So there's a lot to the tongue, as well as to the pulse. So taking the pulse, and you can even like kind of practice on yourself, like putting your right hand across under your left wrist, like 2 fingers. And if your pulse feels like a rabbit, like it's kind of like jumping, it's a little bit like unpredictable, it's like up, 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 like that's a vata pulse. And that means, and this is Vikriti that you're assessing right now. So you have more vata going on right now. If your pulse is like more powerful, like it's like a thump, 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 it's like robust, that's more pitta. You'll feel a pitta pulse quickly. And a kapha pulse, it tends to be a little bit slower. It's more of like a drum roll.
That
it's
is
like,
so me.
But yeah, so you're for sure got kapha going on.
Yeah, it's so funny because my boyfriend was visiting last weekend, and which, because I had to reschedule, but I said to him, I was like I was just like leaning against my head was like, because he's taller than me, like on his chest. I was like, oh my God, your heartbeat is like so fast. And he was like, I'm fine, I'm just like standing here. He like hadn't like gone upstairs or anything, but it felt like that. And then he like listened to mine, and he's like, you're just so slow, what is wrong with you? And I think it's just like he's vata and I'm kapha.
Right. Or even he's like pitta, because pittas have just really, if you can just like feel his heartbeat just like little lying on his chest, that's pitta. Whereas vata pulses, like I remember when I started, I couldn't feel my pulse. I was like, I must be dead because I just don't have a pulse. So that will tell you, even just touching your hands, if your hands are really like cold and dry, vata. If they're like hot, you get hot easily, that's pitta. And if they're cold and clammy, that's kapha. So there's all of these fun little ways, in the shape of someone's face. Like if you have more of like a long face, like gaunt, like, really defined cheekbones, like a ballerina or something, that's vata. If you have more of an angular face, like a strong jawline, that's pitta. And it's also indicative of testosterone, which is reflective of what pitta is all about. And then if you have a more round face, baby face, like my face is super kapha.
I want to send you a photo of me, or you've probably seen photos of me. We'll have to check after this what you think my face looks like. Oh, this is so fascinating. Thank you for going over all this.
Oh, of course. Yeah, and it's like it makes it really fun to know about it, because then everyone you meet in your life, you're like, oh, they're kapha, like that's why they do this. Like, oh, I have a pitta friend, like that's why she got really upset with me when I canceled plans and like spazzed out. It's like, oh, she's a pitta. It makes sense. Whereas like, kaphas are like, it's okay, whatever, it works.
That's
like
very much me.
It's just different energies. So it's amazing because we're able to like really see people where they're at. And I have like a YouTube video. I'm so passionate about like the relationships and doshas and like how to be if you're like a kapha dating a pitta, like because they date in such different ways.
So fascinating. Okay, I have a million more questions to ask you, and I want to get into kind of the spiritual side of this, which is super interesting, and I know you have some great stuff in the book, and I heard you share in the other podcast about that. But first, what are some ways that everyone can incorporate Ayurveda in balancing their doshas into their lives, just in like top line things you could give if you had to, just give a couple?
Yeah. So I think the number one thing we can all stop doing is stop drinking cold things. So whether it's having a frozen smoothie with frozen banana and frozen cauliflower and frozen berries, that sort of thing, or drinking iced coffee, iced water, ice this, ice that. So if the digestion is like a fire and you're constantly putting ice over that fire, what's going to happen?
The fire's gonna go out. It's gonna be bad.
Right. Exactly. So many people, they wake up first thing in the morning and they make their green smoothie, and it's like putting ice over this fire before that fire fully got a chance to, flourish into its full potential. So I like to make something called CCFT, cumin, coriander, fennel seeds. It's tridoshic, meaning it's good for all doshas. And all I do is like about in 4 cups boiled water, I put half a teaspoon of cumin, coriander, and fennel seeds. You can find that anywhere. And it's great for your digestion, for detoxing, for your lymphs, for so many things. So that's
what
just
does
something.
It taste like?
It tastes kind of like spiced licorice.
Okay.
But like the cumin gives it a little bit of like for example, when I was sick growing up, my mom would always give me cumin tea. And I'm like, oh, this is like gross. But I think with the fennel seeds, like fennel seeds have a kind of like licoricey taste. Like if you eat at an Indian restaurant, Indians don't eat dessert. They eat fennel seeds. It's like they have like an array of fennel seeds that they just chew on because it's so good for your digestion.
Yeah.
Even if I buy fresh fennel, I love fennel for like they're chewing on. I will use the stalk of it and boil it in water and drink that tea. So switching from cold foods to warm foods, having teas, having warm things. If you're going to make a smoothie, do it with fresh fruit. Don't do it with frozen fruit. We can all benefit from that.
Got it. Okay, very helpful. And then also tongue scraping. Can you talk about the benefits of that? It's something that I can't talk to anyone or do anything in the morning until after I scrape my tongue. Why do I feel like that? I guess I just am so used to it. I've done it for so many years, but why is that a good practice?
Yeah, tongue scraping is one of those things. It's like, how was I not doing this my whole life?
Yeah.
Because it's like there's just so much stuff on our tongues, and we sleep overnight that the toxins build up. So basically, it's this like U-shaped little device that you can get now at Whole Foods even. But if you Google it, you'll find a million places.
I'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, I use one like Dr. Tongues, which I like. So there's so many different ones. Traditionally in Ayurveda, they use copper ones, and I was doing that for a while, copper everything, but also like with the copper, like the heavy metal toxins, like now I just use stainless steel. So you basically scrape your tongue from back to front about 10 times. You don't want to just do it once. You want to do it 10 times because even deeper in your tongue's pores, there can be the white stuff, the toxins. And it stimulates not only cleanses your mouth from toxins, but also stimulates your digestive system. It gets your digestive system ready for the rest of the day. And our tongues are always talking to our food. And when we put food in our mouths, our tongues are indicating, okay, what enzymes are needed to break this down. And our digestion really starts with saliva. So if we have a clear tongue, we're better able to digest because our tongues are able to tell what we're eating. If our tongues are coated, then our tongues don't know. And once the food's in our system, it's kind of too late for the enzymes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why tongue scraping is really good. Oil pulling is another really good one that you can follow up with. That's basically Ayurvedic mouthwash. You put a spoon of oil, coconut oil if you're pitta or it's pitta season, sesame oil if you're vata or kapha or it's a colder season. And you swish it around your mouth. It does not have to be for 20 minutes. Someone said,
I love this tip. Yeah.
It has to be 20 minutes. And everyone's like, oh, damn, I can't do it because it's 20 minutes of my day. It's like, no, it can be 3 minutes. It can be 1 minute. It can be however minutes that you want to do it. You don't have to stand in front of the mirror and like do affirmations. You can get ready for the day and like spit it out whenever you want. It's not that big of a deal. And also, if you don't do these things for one day, you're not going to like die of toxic overload. These are just things to help make your life better. They should just be habits and rituals, but it's not like another thing that you're going to have. Like with Ayurveda, it's all about not being stressed out.
Yes, preach. So aligned with everything that I think and feel.
Yes.
Very, very cool. Okay. I want to know about the kind of magical side of this all, and when you balance these doshas, how these are connected to our Dharma. Can you talk about what Dharma is and how Ayurveda, and particularly balancing our doshas, is connected to that? And maybe even touch on chakras?
Yeah, so your dharma is your life's purpose. It's the reason why you're alive. And it's believed in Hinduism, Buddhism, many spiritual beliefs that we were all born here for a very specific reason. And this is a reason that only our souls can fulfill. And we chose our bodies, we chose our parents, we chose this time of the life that we want to reincarnate with the internet and all of these things going on. We chose this all. And the reason that we chose this all is because it's the exact obstacles that our soul needed for its highest evolvement. And its highest evolvement is the you that you were meant to be, the true you, the you before all the fears and limiting beliefs and, self-sabotaging behaviors. It's the actual you. So it's not about changing who you are, but really like becoming who you actually are. So that's what makes it really beautiful. It's just like, how much can I shed, not how much more can I gain? And what I realized, working with thousands of people is that doshas they were born with was so connected to their dharma. So someone who is born naturally more vata, they naturally need to be doing something more creative. They will do so well if they're in this like brainstorming zone. They do really well in writing or advertisement and just creative fields like that, something that they can let their minds run free. People who have more pitta in them, they naturally need to be in a managerial role. They do really well in structure, organized leadership, fitness, things like that. They need to have tangible goals that will be met because that's how they feel fulfilled. And someone who's more kapha, they need to have that one-on-one connection. They need to, like this podcast, like get deep and like hear that story. Like that's what fills their heart. Yeah, 100%. And, they love like what you said when you were interviewed on my podcast, what makes you your highest self. And you were like putting away your phone and just connecting with people over your podcast. Like that's the most kapha answer ever. It's like, that's what they love. They're like, let me hear the juice of it. Not just like, the vata might want to hear it. They might be in their own thing. The pitta's like, give me the elevator pitch. Like, I don't really want to get deep in there. And the kapha's like, no, honey, have some tea. Let's sit and talk.
Wow. Yeah.
So I realized that, wow, so many of these health issues we're facing is because we're not living a life aligned with our dharma, that we are creating these health issues, as crazy as that sounds, because we're not living in alignment with our true selves. So I started researching this and really studying this and reading so many books, but also just like grounding back down into, my belief. And when you read so many spiritual books, they all really say the same thing because we all kind of already know this truth. It's just different ways, Ayurveda is just different language to talk about it, but it's saying the same thing that Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, everything else is. So it's really that you just need to be true to who you are. And so I created my Doshas and Dharma program, which is like a 4-week online program, which, helps people figure out what it is that they want to do with their lives. And it's so amazing because we're 2 weeks in and almost everyone has had their breakthrough. And it goes to show that it's like, it was already there. They knew, but it was something keeping them to, I can never make money doing this, or this can never be a full-time thing. I'm not smart enough, whatever it is. All of those things that were keeping them from just like diving in, even if it's scary, and just owning up to like, yes, this is my dharma and I'll figure something out.
Wow, very cool. And I want to do that course next time you offer it. That sounds
absolutely
wonderful. Okay, what about chakras? Can you talk about that a bit? I know there's a chapter in your book on chakras.
Yeah, so chakras are energy centers in our bodies. So I think a lot of people have heard of chakras because of its like connection with yoga. We hear heart openers and, the root chakra. So we have these different chakras in our bodies as well as like one above our bodies. So we have our root chakra, which is connecting us with the earth. It's in charge of survival. It's very similar to like the Maslow's hierarchy. So root chakra, it's very like primal and primitive. And so, if you're experiencing like, if you've been homeless before, you lived in a war-torn country, that's all going to really trigger your root chakra because you don't feel safe. And that shows up as like anger and acting out and just like rage. And we all have this side of us and we all need to be in touch with it, but it's just making sure that it's balanced, not excess or not too little. Some people, a lot of Americans are totally disassociated with the root chakras. They're like, oh, like I don't want to feel things. I'd rather think about them and intellectualize them.
That is so me.
Right. So
yeah, I've been working on that for like the last year.
Yeah, so it's like connecting back into the body and like letting like because I studied shamanism too. Like I'm very passionate about like the shamanic belief because it's not like there's no like guru who tells you the answer. It's like no, like listen to your body right now because your body knows what's up.
What are some ways to heal that chakra?
Oof. So I had to do a lot of this work as well when I came back from Bali and I was like just I also found out like my ex of 4 years was cheating on me and like everything in my world was like crumbling down. So luckily I had these shamanic tools, my favorite, which is shaking, shamanic shaking.
Okay.
So shaking is you go somewhere in nature, you put your feet into the ground, into the soil, feeling the earth's energy, no shoes, because you want to feel the negative ions of the earth to recalibrate your system. And you start shaking your body. And at first you're like, this is weird. I'm just like shaking and you're, kind of faking it. And then
so you're like shaking your arms and legs.
You're
right
shaking
now?
your arms,
Okay.
your legs, your pelvis, your head, your shoulders, your fingers. You're just shaking everything. And after a few minutes of doing this, it's like you are not in control of the shaking anymore. Your body is just shaking. And it's really good to be breathing the whole time, especially through your mouth, like holotropic breath work, like staying with the breath and also making any sounds that need to come out because we store so much trauma in our bodies, not just from this life, but from past. And when we're shaking it, it's getting released. It's just like a dog. It's like every animal shakes to heal itself, but we humans stopped doing that because of patriarchal era said it's barbaric to shake. So we stopped. Whereas before, like, the woman would gather around the campfires in every single society and come around and shake and dance and move. And in societies that are very root chakra, like in Africa and in South America, shaking and dancing and moving your pelvis and your hips, people are not afraid of that. Whereas here, it's like, oh, you're asking for sexual attention, turn that off. So we have a lot of root chakra work to do in this country. So just shaking, connecting with your body, like moving your pelvis, like every single day when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm just like moving my hips in circles. I'm just like, yes, I'm alive. I'm a woman. I can feel into my yoni, feel the energy of the earth and like connect back and power me through everything in life because the earth can power you through a lot more things than you physically can.
Wow. Okay. So what if it's cold and you don't want to put your feet on the ground? Still moving and shaking can be helpful, not quite as helpful.
Yeah, you can still like move and shake, just like, even if you want to play some music, play some like Native American, like I love Tribe Called Red. They have amazing songs that are just like powwows, literally. It's called electric powwow. Playing that, just letting your body be loose, maybe going to an African dance class or an ecstatic
You should teach a class for this.
Well, I created something called Dance Your Doshas.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Is this on your website?
No, I only teach it at my retreats.
Oh, I want to go to that.
Well, I'm going to be teaching one at Wanderlust, Los Angeles, probably in like January or February. It's like going to be an Ayurvedic dance and yoga thing.
Okay, amazing. Maybe I can come to that.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we should bring you to New York and we should like do an event together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I saw your message and I'm going to be doing one at the Deepak home base, ABC.
Oh, amazing. Oh, yeah, I think you mentioned that to me.
Yeah, so we don't have dates, but yeah, and I've actually been to Divya's kitchen and met her as well, so for sure. So yeah, just connecting with your body is the most important thing, whether it's through a dance class, whether it's through just like touching yourself, like it doesn't even have to be sexually, but just like touching your legs, like feeling like, wow, I'm a physical body. Like touch yourself like you would a lover. We give like our partners so much love and attention. Like, why don't we do that to ourselves? Yeah. And that's going to connect you back into your root as well as your sacral. So your sacral is right above it. It's like your kind of like lower navel area. And that's in charge of like relationships, sensuality, fluidity. So like belly dancing is a really good way of getting in touch with there. So root chakra is a lot more like tribal and like getting low, like boxing, this, that, whereas sacral is a lot more like, ooh, like feminine flow, like just feeling really, really sexy in your body.
So they're kind of similar-esque.
They're similar, but there's also huge differences. I mean, a root chakra person might be really upfront and in your face, whereas a sacral chakra person might be a little bit like, you don't really know what they have to say. They're a little bit like mysterious and, that sort of thing. I studied belly dance for a very long time, which was like very sacral. And I think it's something that us women are really lacking in because, before, for thousands of years, women would teach each other like, oh, this is a jade egg. How do you use it? Like, oh, this is how you belly dance and do this with your body. And we don't do that anymore. Our moms don't sit around and tell us how to use a jade egg. So, and we need that because it's such a huge part of our ancestry for all of us and our bodies are meant to be operated in so many different ways. And we're only kind of working in this like very masculine, like work, sleep, this, that. So that's sacral. And then solar plexus is your middle. It's like your sense of self, your identity, your ego self as well. So if you have strong, powerful solar plexus, you really know who you are, you're grounded in your beliefs. In the book, I have them all related to the doshas. I have them related to the koshas, which I won't get into, but it's like layers outside of your body. But so your solar plexus is like, this is who I am. I'm very confident and powerful. But at the same time, if it's too much, you can become like egotistical. So like Donald Trump has like huge solar plexus issues. It's all about me and no one else. And that's what happens when it's too much. And if it's too little, it's, oh, no one cares. Why does what I have to say even matter? So they can go in both ways. Then you have your heart chakra, anahata, and that is it's not love with your partner, it's love for the world. It's your ability to just like feel love and compassion and joy and those like random feelings of like butterflies you get sometimes. It's like, oh, I just feel good. So heart chakra is our ability to love, connect, experience joy, those feelings of butterflies that you get sometimes when everything is just like, it's so perfect.
The best, like in the flow.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of us, we walk around with our hearts so covered. We're like literally hunched over. We're like protecting our hearts because we've all experienced heartache, like we've all had our hearts broken before. And when that happens, you're like, oh my God, I can never love again. I can never trust again. You might have lost a friend. You might have lost anything. So it's really important to keep your heart open. That's why we do heart openers in yoga, and you open your chest, and it's literally just like saying yes to your heart. At the same time, if your heart is so open, you can become overly empathetic that you're just feeling all of the pain of everyone that you come across, like empaths. It's like they're just feeling things for other people, and that can lead to them becoming depressed and anxious because it's like they're picking up on other people's stuff. So it's really important to also like stay grounded and connected to your body and like know what's yours and what's anyone else's. And if you're an energy worker, you practice Reiki or anything else to really guard your energy too. Then you have your throat chakra, which is like where all my energy is, and it's just like communication, and it's talking, and it's like putting things into words, and it's very just like you have a lot of throat chakra. We've been talking for an hour and a half and we're still going. That's throat chakra. Most people are not like this. So it's communication, but sometimes I'm sure you've felt this too. It's like sometimes we overshare. Sometimes we say something without really thinking about it because we're just so chatty and communicative. Then you have your third eye, which is located right between your eyebrows, and that's in charge of intuition. So it's like that like feeling you get like, oh, I don't know, something's not right about this, or that feeling you got that you're like, it's saying vata, but I feel kapha. That was your third eye working. And third eye is so important to have because if you're intuitive, you can like jack away from any of life's problems because you're able to foresee them. And that's why some people are like hyper intuitive and they like know what's going to happen next. We all have the ability to become intuitive. It's not like you're born that way. It's just trusting that voice. And if that voice is talking to you, listening to it, and that's how it gets stronger. Then we have our crown chakra, which is located right above our bodies, which is actually our ability to like pick up on like universal energy and like oneness and like knowing that like you, I, every listener on here, we're all really the same hopes, dreams, fears. And there's really, as different as our doshas are, we're really all the same. And that is really the greater thing of all of this. We are a microcosm of the macrocosm of the universe.
Wow. This is so great. And I could talk to you forever, but I want to ask you the questions I ask everyone. Thank you for going through all of those. How do they relate to doshas in Ayurveda? I know that's in your book, but just like a quick definition of that.
Yeah, so Kapha people they tend to normally have more energy in their bodies. So they might feel kind of more in the like lower chakra areas, more like root chakra, and they tend to like feel things for people, which can also be more sacral.
Okay.
Pittas tend to be more in the middle. They tend to be really like aware of their identity and their ego and who they are, but they also are very passionate, which is heart. And Vatas tend to be more communicative and also intuitive. So Vatas energies are more like up dancing up here, Pitta's in the middle, and Kapha's like anchoring down to earth.
Got it. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I ask you the questions I ask everyone, tell us the story of how in the flow you were when you met Deepak Chopra and how you got the email from him when you were helping the homeless man. It's like my favorite story.
So yeah, I got the book deal and I had the book and I was going to be published in the next few months. I didn't have a hard copy of it yet. And I met someone like through this Facebook group, Moon Club, which Ruby actually runs, who's on your podcast.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I met him through Moon Club, and I was going to New York to visit, and he invited me to come to this yoga and science conference, like a stranger on the internet. And I was like, okay.
As you do. You do.
So I went, and I did not know, like, I didn't know anyone who was going to be speaking there. I didn't go for like a specific purpose. I just went to have something to do. And at the end of the conference, they were like talking about science, this, that. I was getting kind of bored. And I remember thinking in my head, like, the only thing that would make me stay right now is if Deepak Chopra walks on stage. And they're like, okay, it's time for lunch break. Oh, and a special hello from our sponsor, Deepak Chopra. And he walks on, he's like, hello, everyone. And he like walks right off. And like intuitively at that moment, I knew like, and I was going around everyone I met. Do you know Deepak Chopra? I wish Deepak Chopra wrote the forward to my book. I love Deepak Chopra. I've read all of Deepak Chopra's books. Like his book, Perfect Health, is the first book I read about Ayurveda. Like ever since I was 12 years old, I was like obsessed with him. So when I saw him and I had already stalked all of his family members in his life, I was like, this is my chance. So I go through this crowd of literally 1,000 people in this massive auditorium. I walk on stage, like I'm not supposed to be on stage, walk past a bunch of people waiting to talk to him, and I just go right up to him. He's like, hello? I'm like, hi, Deepak Chopra. My name is Sahara. I just wrote this book, The Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, and I'm a huge fan of your work. And I go to your daughter's meditations at Unplug, and your son goes to school with my cousin, and you were here. And I just start listing all of these ways I had stalked his life. He's like, oh, okay, great, bye-bye. And then I was like, I really would love to send you a copy of my book to take a look at. It's about Ayurveda, and you've been such an influence for me in studying Ayurveda. He's like, sure. And he gives me his email, his private email. And I'm like, oh my God, I have Deepak Chopra's email address. And I'm calling my mom, and we're so excited. And then I was just going to send him a copy of my book just to like, for him to know who I am. That was enough. And then I was like, you know what? This is my chance to have him write the cover quote to my book. And I was like, how am I going to ask someone I met for 5 minutes to write a quote for my book? Like, that's something like personal. But I was like, you know what? I already don't have it. And if he says no, I still won't have it. So I'm just going to ask. So I ask him, I send him the book and, you know, just tell him how much he means to me, basically. And he goes, sure, I'll write you a quote for the book. And I was like, yes, oh my God, this is insane. Deepak Chopra was writing a quote for my book. He knows who I am. Flipping out. And I told my friend, Liana, this, who, I don't know if she's been on your podcast. She's in New York too. I'll connect you. Okay. And she's like, well, what do you really want? And I'm like, well, I mean, ideally, in like my magical dream world, writes the foreword to my book, maybe a future book. And one day I want to write books with him. And she's like, well, why don't you just ask him to write the foreword to this book? I was like, I can't ask him to write first of all, my book's going to print on Monday. It's Saturday. Second of all, like, no, that's something you really need to know someone for years for, to write a whole foreword to the book. She's like, just write it in a way that it's like meant to be by the universe. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? She's like telling me like Abraham Hicksing it, like just like the way to say it is just like, there's no way for it to not happen. And it's for like the greater good. So she helped me word it. And I was basically like, like you are the person who introduced Ayurveda to me, and this book is going to be introducing Ayurveda to like the masses, to millions of people, and there's no better person that I could think of to introduce this book to people than to you. And I would just be like so honored for you to write the foreword. And I understand if you don't have time, but I think it would add so much to this book and also help people gain trust in Ayurveda seeing your name on it.
Oh,
And yeah. And I was shitting my pants. I was like, he's going to think I am the most. There's a Farsi word, it's called poru. It's like someone who's asking for way too much. You give them an inch and they're taking more. I was like, he's going to think I'm so poru. I can't believe I asked this. And the next day I'm walking to my friend's house. I'm rushing in New York. I'm eating while I'm talking. So many things going on. He still hadn't responded to me. And about the cover quote, he like pretty instantly responded. So I was like, oh my God, he's probably like blocked me online. And I see this guy and I'm crossing the street and I hear a man saying, can someone help me cross the street? And the last thing I had time for is to help someone cross the street, but something overcame me. Like, you know what? You say you're all Ayurvedic and spiritual. Like, this is someone who needs help. Help them. So I walk back across the street and I help this man, and he like holds on to me, and he looked like he was homeless. He had a really strong smell. I can still smell him today. And he's like, can you actually like walk me to the subway and put me on the subway to Jersey? I was like, okay, like buy my plans. So I'm talking to him, and he was actually a refugee from Iraq, and turns out he had 2 kids that lived in Los Angeles, a doctor and a lawyer, and he was actually like really accomplished and had known so much. And I was like, wow, you really can't judge a book by its cover. So I put him in the subway, and I'm like, by the way, sir, where are you going? He's like, oh, I'm a physics professor. I teach at university. And I was like, huh. And I was like, you know, that was a nice thing I did. I would have never imagined that guy. I thought he was homeless, and he's like a physics professor.
yeah.
And I open up my phone, and there was an email with a page-long foreword written by Deepak Chopra, still with the spelling mistakes in it. Like he like literally like wrote this on his phone and like sent it over to me. The same moment I let go of that man's hand. And Deepak Chopra is like a professor of physics. He's a physicist. And I instantly knew that man was, I don't believe, a human. I literally believe it was an angel put into my life, and the universe was testing me and saying, if this person you put on a pedestal, who you're like, he's Deepak Chopra, he's the best, he only knows, I only want his attention. If he shows up to you, that same soul in a different way, and a smelly homeless man who needs help crossing the street is going to get in the way of your plans, are you still going to say yes to him? And the fact that I did made something so impossible, to Deepak writing a foreword on his phone and sending it to me after meeting me for 5 minutes, happen. And since then, Deepak and I have been besties. I'm going to see him in 2 weeks, and we led a 31-day mind-body transformation challenge together. I'm on faculty of his social network, Jayo, and have a channel there, and I'm speaking at the Chopra Center, and it's like literally so meant to be. And he did a Facebook Live about me after we met, and it was called Meaningful Coincidences. And it was just like, I watch his Facebook Lives all the time, and to be like, oh my God, he's like talking about me and like telling people about me. It's just so crazy. And someone said something to me once recently that's so true. And it's like, there's less competition at the top for what you really want. And what that means is like, something as crazy as asking Deepak Chopra for a foreword to your book is something that most of us would never even think about. It's like, that's not going to happen. Don't even think about it. So there's actually a lot more competition for the average things, because most of us are not thinking at that level. But when you say yes and you start thinking at that level, the amount of people who actually do it are very slim, that chances are you're actually going to get it. So now everything I do in my life, I'm like, what is like the best possible thing that could happen to me? Like, what is it that I want if like everything worked out? And that's the thing that I go for. And you know what? Most of the time it happens because that's where my intention's at.
You're so inspiring. This all makes me so happy. I just want to hang out with you and be around you. Thank you for telling that. It was just such a good story. And I know what that's like to have to tell a story a bunch of times, but I needed it on my podcast. So I felt like I was kind of putting quarters in your jukebox, but I wanted this to be on my podcast. So thank you.
Oh, of course. No, I mean, it's still also new to me, like this happened in May. It's like not
Wow.
like I've been telling the story a million times. It's like
Okay,
this is
good.
all it's the story is still creating itself.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because when I was 22, I wrote this book called How to Operate on a Soul Level. And then I kind of put it away. And I'm like, the reason I didn't publish it is because it's not done being written. Like all of these things are the universe. And don't get me wrong, like things still go wrong, but now I see it as it's happening for me to learn. And every single roadblock is like, oh, this is what my soul needs to get to that next level. And like right now, it's like a lot of strength. Like I need a lot of strength to get to where I want to be. So the universe is throwing me things that make me either need to get stronger or crumble, and I'm choosing strength.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool. Okay, let's do some quick fire questions. Ready for them?
Yes.
I'll warm you up and they get harder as we go, so prepare yourself.
Okay.
Favorite color?
Turquoise.
Favorite day of the week?
Saturday.
Favorite hour of the day?
Like 10 p.m.
Best thing you've eaten in the last week?
The beaming cookie that I just ate. So good.
Beaming cookie. Tell us about this cookie.
Is this amazing raw vegan cookie from this place Beaming in Los Angeles that has like it's just incredible. You must have it when you're here.
Okay,
Like it's
Beaming.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down for when I'm there next week. Amazing.
Yeah, the protein cookie, so good.
What's your favorite part about living in LA and anywhere else I need to go?
That I'm staring at the ocean right now. I live right in front of the ocean.
Oh my gosh. Do you still live with your grandparents or somewhere else now?
No. I've left there. I live in Santa Monica now.
I love Santa Monica.
Yeah.
I'm so sad we're going to be missing each other, but I'll be back in the winter, so we'll have
Yes,
to
for
hang out
sure.
then.
Yeah.
Favorite part of your life right now?
Just like that I'm at this place with my parents that they are proud of me. And this is the first time that's happened.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
How are you challenging yourself and growing right now? What's coming up for you?
I tend to put a lot on my plate and I just start things and I don't really think them through. So as I got this book deal, I started running a new online program at the same time, which has been challenging. But it's also taught me that, you have to wear different hats in life. Like it's a lot easier to be in a hut writing a book when you have nothing else to do versus when you have like 2 hours between interviews and meetings. And it's teaching me to get in there a lot faster.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot as well. Okay, what are your morning routines? Maybe the first 3 things you do when you wake up in the morning and how that affects how the rest of your day goes.
Yeah, I immediately recall my dreams, like when I'm still asleep. I try to always remember what they are because I believe our dreams are messages, and I've seen some really crazy things that have come true or were happening in my dreams. Then I list like 3 things I'm grateful for and my intention of the day, and then I make my boyfriend do it too. And I just also give so much gratitude that I can like wake up like living here with him, with my cute dog, that like this is just where I'm at. Like it's like, I try to always remember like I'm already here. Like don't think of the next thing. Like be thankful for where you are.
Wow, that is so cool. How did you meet your boyfriend?
Oh, that's a whole other story.
Okay,
I literally manifested him. I drew a picture of him on a piece of paper and he came to life.
What?
Yes, that's a whole other story. But
okay,
I literally drew him, wrote everything about him, and I was like, universe, like this is my God man, like my soulmate. This is my person. Send me to him. And within a month, I met him.
Okay, well let's.
And he's coming to India with me now in December to shoot my next book. Yeah.
Okay, well let's do a part 2 in New York, and let's talk about that then.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about Ayurveda and relationships.
Yes, for sure.
Cool. What about evening routines? Last few things you do before bed?
I write until like I was up till 4 a.m. last night. Like that's just when I write. So at night I don't like wind down and like drink a cup of, I guess I'm drinking tea, but it's like I have a lot of Vata energy and Vata runs at night. So before I would try to be like, no, you got to sleep early and like wake up early and like do the Ayurveda things. But I'm like, no, because I wouldn't have the work that I have if I didn't. I wrote that whole Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda like after like 10 p.m. is like when I start getting going. So I'm just in that flow.
That's so inspiring too and interesting. Okay, what are your thoughts on social media? How do you balance it all? Where are you with that?
Oh my gosh. So, I did a podcast episode about why I turned off my DMs, like my Instagram direct messages. And it's something with social media, it's so hard. Like, I love that it's able to connect so many of us, but it's an addiction. And with the direct messages, I think it's brought a whole other level because people are just responding to things that it's not
Yeah.
necessary to respond to.
It's
It's
like
like,
another email.
cool, great, yeah, awesome. And then you like have to respond. And then just like so many like personal questions, like, I don't know what to do about this, that. And it's like, honey, I've never met you. There's no way I can answer that question. Or like
Yeah.
health problems over like DMs. And like if someone takes their time to send me an email, I'll always respond to them. But if it's just like random things on DM, like they don't even say hi, it's just taking, and it was just too much. I was getting so anxious because I would wake up and like be like, okay, let me get through at least 20 DMs right now, and
Oh
then
my
waiting for the elegant,
gosh.
let me get through 20 more. And like, I'm always answering DMs. So I turned it off, and it's been like the best thing ever.
Wow, that's also very inspiring. What about feminism? How do you define your feminism and how do you act feminism in your life?
Yeah, so I come from, a history of female suppression. My grandparents were both in child marriages. My grandma was 12 years old when she was forced to marry my grandfather. My mom was, like a refugee from Iran who had to cover her hair, like come from a lot of female suppression. So it's been a lot of barriers that I've had to block. The fact that I'm writing things about myself online was a huge shock for everyone in my family. The fact that I'm speaking, that I'm sharing, they don't even understand how a woman can even do all of these things. So I believe feminism is just being who you are, whatever that is, and just being okay with, maybe I do want to be a housewife, or maybe I want to be more. And for a long time, I always thought I just want to be a housewife because it's the only thing I knew.
Yeah.
But it's like actually like it wasn't really my highest self. It was just me taking the easier route.
Wow. So inspiring and interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, greatest lesson on family.
That they don't always know what's best for you. I think we all are like we should have so much gratitude for our parents, but they really don't know what's best for us. They grew up in a time that was very different from the world that we live in now, not only in the news and the media, but energetically. It was a patriarchal era. We live in a more feminine time. So the realities that we have did not exist. So they can only give us advice from what they know, which is going to limit our potential. So as much as they love you and they're trying to keep you safe, they also may be keeping you playing small because they don't want you to get hurt. And for me, it took, like 2 years of constant fighting and not really talking to my parents to be able to now come at them and love them and appreciate them without holding on to any resentment, because I know that I truly have lived life on my own terms.
Yeah. Well said, once again. What about greatest lesson on friendship?
Like with friendship, it's hard because I recently had this friendship that ended, and it ended because of lifestyle choices she was making, not in our friendship, but in her life. And I think with your friends, you have to be really aware of the energy that you're bringing forth in your life. And if they're doing things that are not in aligned with how you would live your life and you're still spending time with them, you're in a way okaying that, and you're taking that on. And I was realizing I was taking on a lot of the really negative things that she was doing to other people in her life, and I didn't even want that energy around me. So it was really hard. Any friend breakup is like the hardest thing, because it's like, yeah, we'll still talk, but like not really. It's like almost easier to break up with a guy than it is a friend. But I'm really happy that I did it, and I feel a lot more clarity, and it created space for friendships with people who are aligned with me.
Yeah, I think that's another topic we could do a whole nother conversation on, because it's important and not really talked about. Greatest lesson on God, spirituality, the universe, what happens when we die?
I mean, first of all, that our outer world is a reflection of our inner world, that we can literally think our realities. And then also, I love archetype work, not just the doshas, but I love the Michael teachings, which are 7 archetypes, and just really understanding like that there are a lot more connections than we think. We think people like, that's so random, or like, how could he do this? And like, there's a reason for almost everything if you look down to it, whether it's like through childhood or whatever's going on. So I love noticing the parallels and how things tie in, and I feel like you love that too. So
Yes.
we can talk about that as well.
Yes, these are all just a taste for what's to come, and I have like 5 more questions. But so before I go, the name of this podcast is Let It Out. So when I offer that term to you, do you feel like you let it all out? Is there anything that you really wanted to share that you didn't get to? Anything you wish that people would ask you that you never get to talk about?
Oh, I mean, we talked for 2 hours, but I feel like there's so much more I could let out. So we'll save it for other episodes.
Perfect.
But I love how, with the longer form, you're able to go deeper and hear so much more of the story. And I so appreciate that you're doing this.
Thank you so much. You're wonderful. And let's stay friends and talk really soon over email about
absolutely
what's next for us and our friendship.
Yay! So excited. And for everyone listening, thank you so much to your whole community that you've garnered over so many years. And and I just, we have so many parallels in our story. And for anyone listening, this can be your story too. So don't let anything stop you.
Yes, definitely get her book. It's so good. And her next book, and just watch closely everything that she does, because she's amazing, clearly.
Yeah, and you can follow me on Instagram. That's probably where I'm the most active, at I am Sahara Rose. And you can I have a quiz on my website too to discover your dosha.
Oh, perfect.
On IamSaharaRose.com.
Cool. And we'll put all of that in the show notes as you do. And then, we'll be friends. I'll talk to you really soon, my friend.
Sounds good. Have a great night.
All right, you guys, that was my episode with Sahara. I really think she's fantastic. Follow her on all of the social media. Check out her book. And let's be friends on social media as well, if we're not already. I'm at Katie Dalebout. And I'll let you know the emoji to comment on my Instagram to let me know that you are listening to my ramblings all the way to the end of the episode. So stick around for that. But first, I just want to quickly thank again Care of Vitamins. I love Care of. They are the vitamins I take, and you can try them out for 50% off your first order by going to takecareof.com. They have a simple quiz you can take, answering questions about your lifestyle. You guys know the drill. And from there, they curate a beautiful supplement care package for you that's personalized with your name. And if you want to try them for 50% off, go to takecareof.com and enter code Katie at checkout. That's KATIE, also my name, for 50% off your order. Also, huge thank you to Elizabeth, my dear friend's company, Quarter Lane. It's a book subscription company that delivers to you the most celebrated books of the season directly to your doorstep in beautiful premium packaging. She has a background in visual art, so she makes sure everything looks beautiful, and there's even a custom curated print that she curates every single month. It's the best books that you could have, and if you want 25% off your first collection, or if you want to try it out, I really think you guys should. And you can get 25% off entering the code LetItOut25. That's LetItOut25 to get 25% off your collection. Great for the holiday season, you guys. Just saying. All right. I am so grateful that you are still listening. 200th episode. Feels like a big deal. Maybe it's not. Feels like it to me. I'm choosing to celebrate it. I just think it's good to celebrate some little things in our lives, and this is a little thing that I'm choosing to celebrate. So I hope that you'll join me in the celebration by commenting on my Instagram or tweeting at me and at the guest to let me know that you're still listening right now. And I was really trying to think about what I wanted the emoji to be, and this week I decided I wanted to be the 100%, the little red, it looks like 100 with 2 underlines, twice for 200. So 200%, tweet those at me, Instagram them at me, let me know you're still listening right now. I love you guys so much. Next week I have a really special episode with someone I'm very excited about, a new person to me. Her name is Anula. She owns the Pilates studio that is my favorite that I've been to. And she's one of the most interesting people I've ever met. One of those people you just want to be around. So she's on the show next week. I can't wait for you to hear it. I love you so much, and I'll talk to you then. Bye.